Hey guys, Rukshan here. Thanks for joining me for this video. It's been quite a couple of days for the Australian Electoral Commission, particularly on their online platforms for the AEC, especially on X. They're engaging with Australians who are talking about the electoral process, especially around this referendum with the Voice to Parliament vote. So I want to kind of get to that and, really ask, people watching at home whether it's a good idea or not that the Australian Electoral Commission is actually online engaging on these platforms, or whether the fact that they've been unable in many instances to account for what appears like political bias in some of the decisions they've made and really be transparent about some of these things, like the lawsuit that they took out against font sizes. And then recently we had the signage from the Yes campaign, the purple signage, and they seem a bit blasé about dealing with that, saying that they can't really do anything about it. But then people are pointing out past instances. This is kind of what's happening online, where there's a lot of mistrust in the AEC, and I think they only have themselves to blame, because I've seen them over the last couple of years, especially during election cycles, insert themselves into conversations between everyday Australians who are debating certain topics and points of view, and insert their opinion and try to give their official point of view. And that seems all well and good, but on a platform like Twitter, sometimes these opinions can get misconstrued, and sometimes the points they're trying to make can seem even more inflammatory in the manner in which they make these points. And I think this is a perfect example of that. So I'm just going to pull this up on the screen. And this is about a question that was put forward by someone called Tiki. That's probably not their real name, but they write, "I voted today. We asked if I'd voted already. What's to stop someone from voting at numerous venues?" And then the AEC has replied, "If someone votes at two different polling places within their electorate and places their formal vote in the ballot box at each polling place, their vote is counted." Now, that tweet that they've put out has, obviously, again, gone viral for many different reasons, but obviously the most obvious one being that the AEC is saying that, well, if someone votes at two different places, yep, their vote is counted. And I think the problem with a platform like Twitter and AEC engaging in these platforms in this manner is that there needs to be more context around this. So let's have a look at this context, and I'm just going to share with you what I think about this. And I'm not in this particular case blaming the AEC specifically. I think the whole system, this is a problem with the entire system, and it's not something that's going to be rectified for this referendum. It's potentially something that we should look at rectifying, because there are issues that are popping up when we're discovering how the process works. And for many of us, it's been a long time since a referendum in this country, and since we've seen some of these processes in place. But overall, I think this leads to a broader discussion about things like voter ID and things like ensuring that we can secure the vote in terms of, this person can only vote in one particular spot, right? Not multiple places. But before I get to that, this all kind of stems from this post. Let me go find it, actually, from a Labor MP, Meryl Swanson MP. And she wrote, "Good news. The AEC have now released the early voting locations for the Paterson electorate. The early voting period will run from Tuesday 3rd October to Friday 13th October. And she's got a few hashtags in there. And it's got voice, hashtag vote early, and hashtag vote often. That's a bit of a strange thing to write, right? Especially for a politician. What do you mean by vote often? Like, I'm pretty sure in Australia, technically, at least legally, as far as I'm aware, we're only allowed to vote once. One vote, one person. That's kind of how it works. But of course, they've written hashtag vote early, hashtag vote often. Now, this was pointed out to the AEC, and they said they contacted the MP to rectify this. They actually wrote, "We've been in touch with the MP's office to discuss this. This post was edited swiftly to take that part out. Use of an often misunderstood colloquial saying that shouldn't have occurred and was amended." So this is AEC adding their own little flair and context to this, that they believe that this is why this comment was made. I don't know. Sometimes when I see them making these type of comments, I question the people behind these accounts with adding their personality to this. It should be all very official, in my opinion. Anyway, so let's come back to this. If someone votes two different polling places within their electorate and places their formal vote in the ballot box at each polling place, their vote is counted. And then they've written, "The instance of multiple marks have never been of significant volume and have never more than the margin in an election. We have electronic certified lists across all pre-polls and continuing to many on the day polling places with real-time mark-off of the roll. We cannot remove the vote from the count because due to the secrecy of the ballot, we have no way of knowing which ballot paper belongs to which person. However, the number of double votes received is incredibly low and usually related to mental health or age. So basically, the AEC here is saying that, yes, someone can go to multiple polling booths and vote multiple times, and those votes will be counted. It will only become an issue for the AEC if, I'm guessing from what they're saying here is, they have in place that if it doubles up too much, they can kind of see that, and they can take action based on how many double votes there are. But because it's not within the margin of affecting the election or whatever, they don't really get too concerned about it. That's kind of how I'm reading it, and I'm happy for someone to correct me if I'm reading this wrong. So here they've also written, also worth noting that if someone votes multiple times, they round as fraud in multiple voting, become a designated elector, which means they have complete a declaration vote, eliminating the risk of at future elections. I don't know. I think these guys are having a long day. They're struggling today because they are answering all sorts of questions, particularly about the purple use by the Yes 23 campaign. But yeah, again, I think it's to do with the volume of double votes, and they're saying that if it becomes a problem and it shows up because they are monitoring it, then they can look into it further. But normally it's not an issue as such. That is what I believe they're saying. But, in theory, yes, someone can go vote multiple times. Now, I'm not encouraging this. I'm not saying to do this. I'm saying it's very wrong to do this. But if an individual, if an activist, for instance, wanted to vote in multiple polling booths throughout their electorate, they could do this. And because the paper, the ballot, is secret, it doesn't say who doesn't have a name or any kind of identifying thing on the ballot you're putting in there as such. It's much harder to figure out whether the yes or the no comes from this double vote. So I think that's the issue there in terms of tracking this. Now, all of this can, of course, simply be avoided, you would think, with technology, with just basic stuff like a type of ID system that can, you link your ID in terms of taking your ID with you on the day. Someone ticks it off, and that just kind of updates a machine saying that this person's coming to this booth. It seems quite simple that there could be things put in place that aren't too intrusive, but very basic form of checking. In some countries around the world, for instance, if you vote, they will mark your finger with like an ink. Very basic things which are done around the world to preserve the at least the illusion of democracy, right? A lot of us are, not too trusting of these systems anymore these days, but at least there are attempts made, especially in, interestingly, the third world, to actually give that illusion of democracy. But here we have a system where, it's almost like our hands are thrown in the air. There's systems, legislations, the laws, whatever it is, are designed in such a way where it's like, oh yeah, you can vote multiple times. If we're monitoring it, if it becomes an issue, then maybe, we'll look into it then. But yeah, there's nothing really stopping someone from voting multiple times. What do you think? Do you think the AEC is doing a good job? Do you think they're doing a good job by actually being on platforms like Twitter and Facebook or wherever else they are and engaging with Australians and answering these type of questions? One part of me says it's actually a good thing for institutions to be involved in helping people and supporting people on the platforms that they're using today. We live in a very connected world. Like, it kind of makes sense. But the AEC, what I've noticed with their Twitter accounts especially, is there is this kind of bias there. There is a bit of a personality there that perhaps doesn't need to be around for a government account, particularly one that deals with elections. I think it just needs to be very straightforward. There is a bit of attitude there from the AEC sometimes, and I've been on the receiving end of that sometimes as well, just for whatever reason, when they want to try to correct some of the things that we're discussing, debating and arguing about online, as people do. And it's very weird when the AEC comes into that discussion with their smart ass remarks. So, look, I am part of me is kind of enjoying them having to deal with the drama they themselves are creating. But all in all, as far as the referendum goes, we're seeing now how problematic this has become, right? And on to top all of this off, we have instances of reports where, this is covered on the news recently. You can look this up, that people at their homes are getting multiple ballot papers for mail-in ballots. And there are the AEC is saying there are safety mechanisms to ensure that, you can't send in multiple postal ballots and they can kind of check it back against a password and all this kind of stuff. So, but again, the actual process itself, we're seeing it's not being handled that well. And many times this has been discussed online, the political bias that comes through from the AEC in terms of what they decide to go after, what they decide to take to court, how they handle themselves, for instance, after losing a court case, like very recently with this font size thing, and not explaining to the taxpayers why they wasted that much money over something that seems very frivolous. All these instances kind of add up to this this impression of the AEC as an incompetent organization run by incompetent people. And I think it's quite sad that the people managing our elections, and in this instance, this very important referendum, have this issue of perception. And I think they've only done that to themselves. Anyway, guys, if you're enjoying my videos and enjoying the work that I'm doing, you can follow along at X, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Rumble, Odyssey, at The Real Rukshan. You can also find me on my website at www.realrukshan.com. And you can also there find ways to support my work if you so want to. Thanks, guys. See you next time.